Hello and welcome to your Newsmax Daily for Tuesday, August 6, 2024. So far, some of the fears and panic of yesterday have been quelled a bit, except for air travel, which is still a complete mess in most of the country, especially the East Coast, courtesy of now Tropical Storm Debbie, which continues dumping rain on Georgia and the Carolinas.
We had a flight with American and to get from Miami to Raleigh-Durham, and it got canceled this morning, and they couldn't get us on a plane until Wednesday afternoon.
Wednesday, like tomorrow. Whoa, that's rough. People are sleeping in airports all over the country. It is going to be a rough few days for air travel and especially rough for some folks in cities along the East Coast. The panic and surprise that I witnessed yesterday of what was happening on Wall Street and overseas, especially in the Middle East, is just proof of what I've been saying all along. Many Americans just haven't been paying attention. Greg Kelly did a nice job of summing up the sad state of affairs on last night's edition of Greg Kelly Reports.
You think you just fell out of a coconut tree? Can you raise your hand if you love a yellow school bus, right?
Democrats may seem like they're riding high over the past couple of weeks. After all, she's received glowing coverage, but the top Democrats, the smart ones, the ones in the know, are terrified because they know that she has not been fully vetted. But that is happening right now, and all kinds of interesting things may come out. In addition to what we know already, the husband made some news over the weekend. It is astonishing that she gets to pick, potentially, conceivably, the next vice president of the United States. Wow. But Obama probably gets the final sign-off, right? We are hearing that any moment, any second, we could find out which white man she picked to be her vice presidential nominee. You see, you can pick a white man at this point. The Democrats will allow that because she's a woman of color. Therefore, all of the candidates, all of them, are white men. Most regular people don't care about race, what color anybody is, but they are obsessed with it. And so, anyway, we'll see which one she picks. Could happen by the end of the show. Israel. Tonight, our thoughts and prayers are with Israel. You know, it is surrounded by enemies. And by the end of the show as well, they could be in a shooting war with Iran. Iran has vowed revenge because Israel took out that terrorist leader in Tehran. And, things could light up and get hot very, very fast. However, we're told that Iran has some pause tonight because through an intermediary, Israel has threatened to annihilate all of Iran's nuclear facilities if Iran should strike one civilian in Israel. It would be really great to get rid of those nuclear facilities, wouldn't it? But we want everybody in Israel to be safe tonight. We also have something called the Kamala crash, okay? This is a taste of what's to come in a Kamala administration. Really, this is bad, bad stuff. So really, turmoil overseas and uncertain economy at home. It's the opposite to what Donald Trump delivered. Peace and prosperity.
Right as I started to record this morning, it was announced that Kamala Harris did select Minnesota Governor Tim Waltz as her running mate. So you'll be hearing plenty about that today, and I'll tell you a little bit more in a moment. As far as the markets go, Greg Kelly is not a financial expert, but this guy is.
If you care about your paycheck, you go with Trump. If that's what you do.
Yes, that's CNBC's Jim Cramer. If you are in the stock market, if you care about your paycheck, you want to go with Trump. And guess what? If you have a 401k, an IRA, a SEP, whatever kind of plan, unless it's all in gold and silver or crypto, you are in the stock market. And I used to watch that show every single morning when I was really into trading. I still don't know to this day if Cramer and David Faber actually like each other or not. All right, Rob Schmitt has more on this with the help of some other very well-known financial experts.
All of this coming as we all just feel that we're not in a healthy place. And we've felt this for a couple years now. The question, though, is what happens tomorrow? For that, we have some of the best minds around. Steve Forbes is chairman and editor-in-chief of Forbes Media. He joins us now along with economist Peter Schiff. Gentlemen, good to have you both. Steve, starting with you, is this the start of what let's be honest, this is a well-deserved correction if it does come with what we've done to this economy, with how much money we've spent?
What you're seeing with the economy is a slowdown. The economy has not been as good as the numbers have portrayed.
Yeah.
You look at that jobs report, most new jobs have come from the government or businesses related to the government. In the past year, 500,000 full-time jobs have been eliminated, 550,000 part-time jobs have been created. So that jobs report paints a very dismal picture when you actually look at the innards of it.
Yeah.
We're not creating jobs. And businesses are now facing growing inventories. Sales aren't quite what they used to be. Even well-to-do people are starting to draw back a little bit. So, yes, we're heading into headwinds. And the question is, what props can the government pull out to get them through the election?
Exactly right. Peter, you've been predicting, some pretty dark days coming for a while. How do you assess what we saw today?
Well, I think it got started with the jobs report on Friday. But by the way, you showed the graphic of a 4.3% unemployment rate. That's a lie. The U6 rate is 7.8. And up until 1994, the U6 rate was the only rate they reported. And I took a look. And for the 52 years going backwards from 1994, there wasn't a single year where the unemployment rate ended as high as the unemployment rate is right now. So it's a lie to say that we have low unemployment. We have high unemployment. We have a weak labor market, but we also have inflation. And that is the big problem that the markets are going to be grappling with, because they're now starting to price out a soft landing because we're already in recession. We've been in recession all year, probably for a good part of last year. They will eventually officially acknowledge it. But when the Fed cuts rates, and maybe they'll wait until September, or maybe they'll think they have to rescue the markets by cutting rates sooner. But when they cut rates, they're going to reignite inflation. So they're not going to stimulate the economy. They're going to stimulate inflation. And Americans are going to have the worst of both. They're going to have a deeper recession, but even more inflation. It's going to be stagflation that would make Jimmy Carter blush.
And so it sounds like, Steve, he's saying that there's really maybe no way out of this, that, that some pain is going to have to be felt, that the Band-Aids that they have are not going to work. What do you think of that?
Well, the pain's already being felt by over half the population now with their monthly bills.
Sure.
One of the things that the CPI and other indexes don't include is the interest you pay on mortgages, the interest you pay on auto loans, the interest you pay on your credit cards. For some reason, they don't consider that a cost of living.
Yeah.
So the real inflation rate is about twice what the number is.
That's Steve Forbes and world-renowned economist Peter Schiff. So the interest rates you're paying, which is the highest that they've been in decades, isn't figured into a lot of the so-called economic indicators. Back to Steve Forbes. Listen to this.
So in terms of what can be done, we got to have a total change in this administration. And a key thing is the White House, because even if Republicans get control of Congress next November, but Kamala Harris somehow slips into the Oval Office, the deep state, the regulatory state, will continue issuing regulations to wreck the economy. Look what they're doing to student debt. Courts say you can't do it.
Yeah.
What do they matter?
Right.
Again, that's Steve Forbes, chairman of Forbes Media, on Rob Schmitt Tonight, saying the change must come at the top in the White House. The good news for us is the stock markets are bouncing back some today. And you may be saying, but weren't most of the markets at all-time highs? Yes, but everything you're paying for and the interest you're paying to get those things is also at all-time highs or close to all-time highs. Unless you're an illegal migrant, then you're getting $10,000 or $12,000 a month handed to you. For the rest of us, things are not that easy. Vice President Harris, as I mentioned, picked Minnesota Governor Tim Waltz as her running mate. Whatever they tell you today, it's not a surprise. Minnesota is where the Biden-Harris team has had a lot of problems with the Palestinian vote, and there's a large population of them there. Meanwhile, Harris's husband, the second gentleman, Doug Emhoff, is Jewish, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays into all the anti-Israel people. Harris will now officially introduce Waltz at a campaign event tonight in Philadelphia. Let's go back to Rob Schmitt.
Welcome to Rob Schmitt Tonight. For the past 2 weeks, the Kamala Harris sugar high has taken over the race for president. Recent polls now claim it is a toss-up, as a candidate long considered a nitwit has been rebranded by her party and the media as some kind of political dynamo. The Kamala Harris rebrand has been very impressive, but it's likely that today woke a lot of people up. The United States, currently led by a man who belongs in a nursing home, is now flirting with a full-scale economic collapse paired with the threat of an all-out war in the Middle East that could include nuclear weapons. The trillions that were lit on fire during COVID and 3 years of capitulating to enemies like Iran are poised to deal tandem heavy blows to our country while we are very, very vulnerable. Over the last 15 days, politically, Mr. 4-day weekend has been reduced to dust. You barely hear much from Joe Biden anymore. He walked across the lawn today. We did see that. It appears our country is now being led by a woman who got her job to satisfy some kind of quota, which really didn't matter at the time because the job she got was a purely ceremonial position until suddenly, 15 days ago, it wasn't. If you were wondering how Kamala Harris as president would handle an economic collapse, a debt collapse, and possible nuclear conflict with Iran at the same time, well, take a listen as she addresses both of those topics.
And what's the message to Iran?
Don't.
As President Biden said, just don't.
Exactly. One word. Pretty straightforward.
Well, let's start with this. Prices have gone up. And families and individuals are dealing with the realities of that bread costs more, that gas costs more. And we have to understand what that means. That's about the cost of living going up. That's about having to stress and stretch limited resources.
You've probably seen these clips maybe before. They're not new. We keep pounding them into your head because the message is very clear. That woman is currently a coin flip away from leading your country and leading the free world for the next 4 years. It is mind-boggling, I know. And by the way, Kamala and Joe both said don't to Iran, one of the most embarrassing moments we've ever seen in foreign policy. And yes, 6 months later, Iran fired an arsenal of missiles into Israel. That was back in April of this year. Let's see what they come up with possibly later tonight.
So again, if you've been paying attention, you know Iran has ramped up threats to Israel in response to last week's killing of the Hamas leader in Tehran and the Hezbollah commander in Lebanon, right? You may not know all that, but you know that they've been ramping up the threat. Many thought an attack would happen overnight, and it didn't, thankfully, but it could still happen at any moment. The news today is that the foreign minister of Jordan made a visit to Iran in an attempt to de-escalate the whole situation. It is the first visit by a senior Jordanian official to Tehran in more than 20 years. So it really means something. Meanwhile, the Pentagon confirmed several U.S. military personnel were injured following a rocket attack Monday at the Al-Assad air base in Iraq. Again, President Biden and Vice President Harris were briefed on the attack, according to the White House. And I told you yesterday that the U.S. sent more warships to the Middle East over the weekend, right? Secretary of State Blinken yesterday told G7 countries that Iran and or Hezbollah could attack Israel in the next 24 hours. So it's imminent. Newsmax host Lydia Serrani spoke with David Friedman, the former U.S. ambassador to Israel.
Iran saying today that it's not looking to escalate regional tensions, but believes it needs to punish Israel, the Zionist regime, to prevent further instability. What do you make of that comment, sir?
Well, I don't know what it means. And, I'm in Israel now. So, it's like waiting for a hurricane to come. But you can't track the hurricane, and you can't gauge the intensity of the hurricane. So we're all kind of blind as to what's going to happen. Israel has confidence in its defense forces, and we got 12 American ships, helping to defend Israel. But the real problem is that is America, willing to let Israel go on offense? Because as long as Iran, perceives this as a kind of unilateral attack on Israel, where, America will defend Israel but will not permit Israel to go on offense as kind of the price for that defense, they got nothing to lose. They'll shoot at Israel, and if it gets through, it gets through, and if not, they're still where they were, where they started. So it's very concerning. My biggest concern is that there's not enough downside right now being imposed, not enough pressure on Iran not to go forward, which means, look, there's going to be an attack here. A lot of rockets, a lot of missiles, a lot of drones. And we just have to hope that the defense forces of both the U.S. and Israel are up to the task of keeping us safe.
The Biden-Harris team, unfortunately, don't inspire much confidence, right, that they can somehow de-escalate all of the tensions. Joe Biden is set to convene his national security team today in the Situation Room. And I want you to take a listen to what he said to a reporter yesterday when asked about the rising tensions in the Middle East.
Mr. President, do you think Iran will stand down? Do you think Iran will stand down, sir?
I hope so. I don't know.
So that is difficult to hear, but President Biden shouted back from a distance, "I hope so, but I don't know."
So, Ambassador, what do you think about that?
I'm not sleeping any easier tonight with that response. Hope is not a policy. And look, when we left office, I worked for Donald Trump for 4 years as the ambassador to Israel. When we left office, Iran's GDP per capita was under $200 billion. In 3 years, it's now over $400 billion. Like your prior guest, just before me, who talked about how Trump had sanctioned Venezuela and Biden, let them off the hook, and Maduro came back to power. It's the same story. It's the same story here in Iran. Iran was broke under Trump, and Biden relieved the sanctions, and now Iran is a very powerful country with lots of money and lots of weaponry, lots of missiles, and there's real consequences, as we're seeing. The people in Venezuela are suffering. 9.5 million Israelis right now are going to sleep tonight. None of us, including, I'm not an Israeli, but I'm here now. We're going to sleep tonight. We have no idea whether we're going to sleep through the night or wake up to sirens and have to go into shelters. And then that's our reality. And for Biden to say, I hope so, I don't know, is just not an adequate response for the leader of the free world.
Former U.S. Ambassador to Israel, David Friedman, on Newsmax. If you have seen any of President Biden's exchanges with the press in the last couple of days, the last couple of weeks, especially the last few days, getting on and off of Marine One, he can no longer continue as president of the United States, as commander-in-chief. I'm saying this as respectfully as possible. I mean, if you see this, he has that blank stare, that drop jaw that confused old people have. It's sad. And it's ridiculous at this point that he's the leader of the free world. The Democrat powerhouse that got him out of the race need to get him out of the office, like today. By the way, he once again has an empty calendar today. No surprise. There is a White House press briefing this afternoon, and Karine Jean-Pierre will have her hands full once again. Let's wrap it up with some great commentary from Joe Pinion, who says he is proud to be labeled weird by the liberals.
Here's the thing, folks. There are arguments that can be made to vote for Democrats in 2024 in a free society. I don't agree with the arguments. I think they all pretty much suck. And here's the silent truth. The Democrats, they know those arguments suck, which is why they rarely make the case on facts, just emotions. But hey, if it's weird not to want children chemically castrated or taught about the mechanics of sex before they know how to spell the word, well, I guess just call me weird. If it is weird to want citizenship in America to mean something, to not want our sovereignty debased by 8 million people flooding our southern border illegally because our leaders told them to do so, call me weird. If it is weird to ask politicians not to print so much money on wasteful spending that our retirement plans become useless, well, I guess count me in for Team Weird. And if it is weird to believe that the Chinese Communist Party should be held accountable for flooding our streets with enough fentanyl to kill every man, woman, and child that calls this nation home every single month, count me in. It's weird to consider creating conditions that will inevitably lead to the next 9/11 after we made a promise never to forget. Well, give me that scarlet letter. Let me be first in line. Let weird be the new home of those who crave normalcy and dignity and are simply tired of being lectured by the left about moral standards, all while they demonstrate they have no damn standards at all. And this is why their consternation about President Trump's critique of Kamala Harris's racial background rings so hollow for so many. Because the truth is, they have no problem denigrating black people when those black people choose not to bend the knee to the whims of the political left. A left-wing movement that labeled Larry Elder and Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears the new black faces of white supremacy. A Democratic Party currently led by a man in Joe Biden who joined the Senate eating lunch with Southern segregationists in the Senate, left the Senate eulogizing former Klansmen, and then entered the White House by professing that if black people didn't vote for him, they weren't black.
Great information, as always, from Joe Pinion. Speaking of moral clarity and standards, you remember when the lefties called for the Kansas City Chiefs to fire their kicker, Harrison Butker, for the pro-family, anti-woke commencement speech he gave at a Catholic school that he had graduated from? Well, Butker is getting the last laugh today. He has secured a 4-year contract extension with the Super Bowl champs worth nearly $26 million. Now, that might not sound like a lot of money compared to some of the other contracts for other players, but it's the largest contract ever for an NFL kicker. So congratulations to Harrison Butker. If you work in law enforcement or community outreach, you know that today or tonight is National Night Out, a big, big night for law enforcement and their communities to come together. You also may know that I live near Orlando, Florida. The Central Florida community is mourning the loss of 28-year-old Lake County Master Deputy Bradley Link, 28 years old, killed in the line of duty over the weekend. 2 other deputies were critically injured in an ambush-style attack on what started as a routine call. If you wear the uniform, if you're on the beat today, thank you for what you do and be safe out there. So Israel is on high alert. Kamala has a running mate. And the markets. All big news today, and you can keep up with it all on Newsmax, Newsmax.com, and Newsmax Plus for the absolute most complete lineup of your favorite shows and guests. Rob Schmitt Tonight, Greg Kelly Reports, Frontline with Carl Higbee, Greta Van Susteren, Newsline with Bianca De La Garza, Wake Up America, and much more, with analysis from people like Governor Mike Huckabee, political analyst Mark Halpern, Senator Rick Santorum, Judge Napolitano, Carrie Lake, and many others. I'm Tony Marino. Thank you, as always, for listening to the Newsmax Daily Podcast. Please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you are listening to or listening on. Enjoy the rest of your day and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
It's our America. We conquered it. We built it. Great values like honesty and fairness. Great courage. A great nation needs a free press. Newsmax is it. 30 million Americans regularly go to Newsmax when they really need to know. They watch Newsmax TV at home. On the free Newsmax app, they go to Newsmax.com. Start today. Newsmax is real news for real people.